Today we are going to be using QuickBooks Online in order to create and print checks. Your first step when you're in your QuickBooks account, this is your homepage, should look similar to this. Your left nav bar might be a little bit different, but in general this is how it should look. In order to create a check, the first thing that you want to do is click on this plus new button and then go down under vendors and click check. This screen is going to show you all the details of your check that you need to complete in QuickBooks in order to get to the step where we are printing. The first step here is to choose your payee. If you don't see your payee in this list, you can always add new right here. And when you click on add new, you're going to want to add as many details as you possibly have about the person you're writing the check to. It's always nice to have an email, phone number, address, everything on file. Any notes about that vendor would be helpful. Anything that you have on that vendor is helpful to have in your QuickBooks file. For this case, we're not going to add a new payee. We're just going to use one that exists. We are going to choose Ellis Equipment Rental, and we are writing them a check today. The next step is going to be to look at the bank account. This is really important, especially if you use multiple checking accounts. You want to make sure that this bank account that you select here is the same exact check account that you're writing the check for. So the paper check should match this checking account. Next, just re-verify that the mailing address is correct, and especially if you are actually mailing the check, and if you have a window envelope, then we really want to make sure that that's correct to avoid any USPS errors. The payment date is usually today. And then check number, instead of typing in the check number here, you need to click print later. And then tags, if you use tags, here's where you're going to enter that. Category, your category that you're writing the check for should already exist. So these are all the categories that you see on your profit and loss statement. So I would advise to not add a new category, especially if you have a bookkeeper. Don't add a new category without talking to your bookkeeper, because every time you add a new category, your profit and loss gets a little bit longer, and we want that profit and loss to be as concise as possible. So for this person, we're going to book this to maintenance and repairs. Description, this description does show up on the check. The vendor could see this, so you want to make sure that this is something professional. Obviously yours would be different. It would probably match whatever the invoice says. Amount, this amount here is exactly the amount that you want to be writing the check for. If you use billable, tax, or customer fields, this is where you would fill those out. And then memo, this memo actually shows up on the check itself, so you want to make sure that it's short and sweet. Usually if I have an invoice number, I'm going to write down the invoice number right here. That helps the vendor to match the payment to the invoice. Finally, if you do have an invoice, it is a great idea to attach that invoice right here. That way you can always go back and look at that invoice and see what you paid for. All right, now we are done typing everything in here, so we're going to save and close. Next, we're going to go back to the plus new, and under vendors, we're going to go down a little bit further here and print checks. All right, and as you can see, here's our print checks. This is the checks that we just created. And the reason that it shows up here is because we selected to print later. If we forgot to select to print later, it would not show up here. And so you'd have to go back to that check and click on that button. And here, if you want to, you can add your check number. This would correspond with the number in your checkbook. Then we would just preview and print, and this is how it's going to look. Here's the check at the top. Oh, and if this is your first time, prior to getting to this screen, you're going to have a check print setup screen. So make sure that you spend some time there to make sure that your setup is accurate so that all of your checks print out correctly. This is what the preview looks like, so looks good to me. Here I'm going to get a dialog box asking if they printed correctly. Yes, they printed correctly, so I'm good. I just printed it, so now I am done, and now I can get that check off to a vendor. All right, thanks for watching.